Were we too early to write off KSP2? Can modders really do the impossible and finish the Kerbal Space Program sequel after it was abandoned? Or is the game doomed to fail no matter what? Let's find out. Hello everybody and welcome. Today we're looking not at Kerbal Space Program 2, but at KSP2 Redux, the new and, dare I say, improved version of the game. What is it? Well, it's the result of a bunch of modding enthusiasts banding together to save the remains of KSP2 after development was abandoned by publisher Take-Two, who shut down Studio Intercept Games and fired everyone who had worked there in June 2024. Calling themselves Rendezvous Entertainment, the group has been painstakingly trying to make it possible to improve the final installment of KSP2, patch 022, by various methods. Since they don't have access to the source code, you could call what they are doing a humongous mod on which other mods can build on in the future. By the way, if you are interested in the history of KSP2 and why it was doomed to fail, I have an entire almost hour-long video detailing the multiple years development and what went wrong. Link is in the description. Also, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more quality content. And hopefully a voice that isn't recovering from illness. Before we dive into KSP2 Redux, let me just say what an interesting time it is to be a space simulation game enthusiast. Kerbal Space Program has been around in one form or the other since 2011. KSP2 was actively developed between 2017 and 2024. Since then, the Kerbal intellectual property was sold off and nobody knows what will become of it, and a bunch of successor games have popped up. If you have been following my channel, you know that there is of course Kitten Space Agency, which is shaping up to be at least technically really well done. There's Juno New Origins, which came out in 2023, and the developers are currently working on their next game, Simple Planes 2, which is less focused on space and will stick more closely to the planet's surface. Also in the works, Space Flight Simulator 2, which at least in this preview video proves that it is in spirit related to KSP. And yet, there are people trying to revive the spark that was ignited when the first trailer for KSP2 came out back in 2019. Back then, the hype was very much real. After the first early access version came out, not so much, unfortunately. So what can you expect from KSP2 Redux, which is currently in a public beta phase? According to the extensive changelog, there are numerous bug fixes and performance improvements listed, as well as some additions that were not present in the stock game. These include 2 radiator parts, which might look familiar to you if you have ever played the original KSP. Also, there is already a new node inside the tech tree for resource mining, labeled Early ISRU, but it doesn't add any parts and you can't do anything with it yet. Based on the plans of what KSP2 was supposed to be able to do, for instance setting up automatic resupply lines between a mining rig and a colony, having ISRU is one of the basic building blocks for those features promised in 2019. And speaking of those promises, the Rendezvous Entertainment members want to fulfill them in absence of the original KSP2 developers, some of which are now working on Kitten Space Agency. The milestones, colonies, interstellar, and multiplayer can be found on the Redux roadmap as well, similar to how they had been present on the original one for KSP2. But we're not there yet. Right now, KSP2 Redux is still in stage 0, or the foundation stage, which is set to provide performance improvements, bug fixes, the already mentioned ISRU, heat management, and a modding SDK. Now let's talk about the experience of playing KSP2 Redux. First, you need to install it in parallel to an already existing KSP2 on your PC. Redux needs the stock files to patch them for all the things the modders have added to the game. Once that is done and you start it up, you will notice the Redux logo in the bottom left corner. Apart from this obvious difference, you will only notice the changes once you play the game for a while. For instance, re-entry effects now have different colors for different atmospheres. Orbit lines now have multiple colors compared to just 2 in the original game, providing a better overview of which orbit is how far into the future. And flags are now visible from the map view. This is very helpful if you want to revisit a specific landmark later on and don't want to leave a vessel or parts of a vessel at that surface location. There is also an integrated bug reporting tool to make it easier to report any issues with the game. It will automatically collect relevant information for the people working on Redux and send it their way. And those reports are actively being watched and the issues worked on. I have reported a couple of bugs and have already gotten feedback on at least one of them. And this is where I have to temper your expectations. We are not talking about a fully staffed studio with a couple dozen developers that are working on KSP2 Redux full time. These are people who in their free time are trying to reverse engineer and mod the heck out of an abandoned game to make it somehow work. The public beta is called version 0.2.3, a direct follow-up to the final KSP version 0.2.2, so even with the added features it is still a small improvement. The big problems inherent in the KSP2 code are still there. Performance is still bad. I am on a very beefy machine, and while FPS is in the triple digits in the menus, I am in the low 2 digits when flying more complex vehicles. Radial attachment is still fundamentally broken. I mean, look at this. Building big vehicles was always my kind of thing, and while the original KSP had its issues, you could work around them. In KSP2 things break so randomly that it is just not funny anymore. I only was able to make this rocket work by redesigning how things attach to each other, limiting the amount of radial booster attachments. It looks similar to the one breaking all the time, but the internals are different. I know it's not a fair comparison, but if you look at Kitten's Space Agency's performance, I have a consistent frame rate over 100 FPS no matter how jank or cursed the thing I'm doing in the game is. Granted, the vehicle builder and all vehicle physics are still very early days in that game. Speaking of building, fuel lines in KSP2 Redux still tend to disappear, same as they did in stock KSP2. Either they just visually vanish and they nevertheless work fine, or they actually stop working and you have to shuffle around fuel during flight. And while we're on the topic of during flight, there are a couple of missions where you have to visit specific landmarks and perform a crew observation there. Well, that only counts when you're on the ground next to those landmarks. If you do a pinpoint landing on top of them, the game thinks you're still in flight and your mission will not complete. Another thing that makes flying difficult is the fact that the Delta V numbers displayed on the staging UI are not reliable. This is a basic math issue that should not occur, but nevertheless does and also did in stock KSP2. For me, playing KSP2 Redux was a bittersweet moment. On the one hand, it's great to see that the community is trying to give us the game we all wanted. On the other hand, I can't help but wonder if they even have a chance to finish this based on the fact that they don't have full access to the source code and that they will run into the limitations of the Unity game engine that have plagued Kerbal Space Program from the start, as the creator of the game, Harvester, has confirmed multiple times now. It's still early for KSP2 Redux though. As I said, this is the very first public beta that has been made available, with an actual release still some time away. You might ask yourself, with all the other games I mentioned in the beginning, why would people even contemplate trying to resurrect KSP2 from its way too early grave? You could also ask yourself, why do people climb a mountain for the first time? It's a challenge, and being able to rise to a challenge and move forward with solving a complex problem is a reward in and of itself. But let me know what you think about this endeavor down in the comments. Are you going to try out KSP2 Redux, or is it still too early for you to be interested? And if you enjoy what I do here on this channel, you can support me making this type of content over on Patreon, where you can watch all my videos ad-free for a small monthly contribution. Or if that is too much of a commitment, you can leave a few bucks for a single video on Patreon or by pressing the super thanks button here on YouTube. Overall, I am happy that KSP2 Redux exists, or rather that there are people that still believe in the vision outlined to the public more than 6 years ago. Let's just hope the team behind it will have more success than the original developers. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel for more and follow me on my social thingies. The links are in the description. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.